Picture this. You're at a dealership and you found a car that you absolutely love. Salesperson comes along and says, you gotta test drive it. You don't really know how to test drive a car, but you also don't want to look stupid in front of them. So you say okay, and then you hop into the car and you look over at the smiling salesperson who reaches across and just cranks up the volume. Well, naturally, you smile back. How the hell did he know that this was your jam? So you put it into gear and you drive around the block. Test drive, done. You sign on the dotted line. A couple days later, the radio stops working, and all of a sudden you start hearing all of these weird noises. Ding, ding, ding. Ooh, check engine just popped on. Car starts shaking real bad. Any of this sound familiar? What's going on, my beautiful people? My name is Mark Beneke, a proud member of Westland Auto. And in today's video, I'm going to be taking you through our step-by-step process that I personally use to inspect and test drive each of the vehicles that we end up purchasing for the dealership to reduce our chances of buying a bunk car. And that's thousands of cars that I inspect, in case you were wondering. Hopefully, it can help you reduce your chances of buying a ticking time bomb. Now, in order to do this properly, you're gonna need two things. First, an OBD2 scanner. You can pick one up on Amazon for about 10 to 20 bucks, and it is 1,000% worth the investment. This is the one that I personally use, and you can find a link in the description below. Now, the second thing you're gonna need is a partner for two different parts of the process. This could be a person, or my personal favorite, a smartphone. Now, the first thing that I do before I ever even get to where the car is, I research it. It simply means that I take a look at the pictures that are available just to see if anything stands out. Major body damage, rust, tears on the interior. I pull a history report to see if there's any major announcements like a branded title, odometer issues, or major accidents. Now, a quick note here, the majority of vehicles out on the road right now have actually been involved in some type of accident. And if they haven't yet, they will be. So I personally wouldn't recommend that you eliminate cars just because of an accident, unless, of course, you're a big stickler for that. If I see that everything checks out, then it's time to go and pay the car a visit. I start off with an exterior inspection. This part requires for me to do a little bit of business on my hands and knees. No, not like that. Come on, get your head out of the gutter. I just mean taking a quick peek under the car. But before that, I do an inspection for the paint. I look for scratches, dents, or any sign of exterior damage. These tend to be fairly obvious, but just in case you don't know what you're looking for. This right here is a dent, and this one right here is a scratch that my ex-girlfriend left in my car. Let me just warn you, keys are a very dangerous tool for angry exes. But there's one more way that I look at the vehicle to check for prior damage. Yeah, see, a history report cannot tell you in any way of accidents that were never reported to begin with. So because of that, I pay very close attention to any gaps. Gaps where all of the pieces of the body come together. For instance, between the hood and the front fenders. The gap here typically looks like this. You'll catch others on the door, the trunk, the bumper, pretty much anywhere that the pieces are going to come together. What you're wanting to make sure is that it doesn't look like this. If you notice something like that, bring it up to your salesperson immediately. If this doesn't personally bother you too much, that's okay. We can use this as a negotiation tactic later on. But if not, you might want to walk away right now. I also make sure to take a look at each of the tires and the rims to see what kind of condition they're in. And then I put my hand over the trunk and I just give it a little push. If I feel that it's just bouncing up and down like a carousel, then I know immediately that it might need a little bit of suspension work. So I note that down. Now, aside from that and any kind of cosmetic damage, I always make sure to take a peek at the underside. I try to make sure that nothing looks overly worn, but most of all, I'm trying to look out for that nasty copper look. Rust. If I see any sign of rust, rust is a non-negotiable for me, and I urge you to make it a non-negotiable for yourself as well. They are the definition of ticking time bombs. Now, in case you don't know what rust looks like, take a look here. It's disgusting stuff. Oh, you want to see something funny? What's all that bright green shit here? He's super colorblind, in case you didn't catch on. It's officially time to jump into the car. I always give it a quick visual inspection. Try to look out for any kind of tears on the seats, whether they're leather or cloth. And if there's seat covers, I make sure to take them off. I want to be able to assess the full damage. If there are a few here, then that can be a good thing, as you can use this as leverage as well. I open up the glove box, the center console, the visors, pretty much anything that opens and closes. And now I pop the hood and take a look under there. The hood latch is typically by your leg, close to the door. You're gonna find the oil dipstick and make sure that the oil looks good. First time that you pull it out, you're just gonna wipe it off, pop it back in, pull it back out, and check to see what kind of condition it's in. If it looks milky at all, it means that the oil and the coolant have mixed, and that is a clear sign that your motor, the oil cap, also needs to be removed and inspected. And then you want to take a look at the coolant reservoir. If I notice any kind of residual splatters over the engine bay, it typically means that at some point the vehicle overheated. This isn't something that eliminates the car immediately. However, it makes me a little bit weary, and I tend to look at things a little bit more closely. Now I leave the hood open and I hop back into the car. I then take the key and I turn the car to the on position. I do not turn it on, just to the on position. Immediately I make sure that if the radio is on, to turn it off. This is crucial. This is one of the moments where we're gonna need the partner or the phone. Because when you finally do turn that car on, you're gonna wanna pay attention to any smoke that comes out from the tailpipe. Black, white, or blue smoke is a clear indicator that something is either wrong with the engine or some of the other components. Not worth it. Vapor is different. It looks a little bit more like this. But these here, that's what you don't want. While your partner checks that out, you're gonna pay attention to something else. So let your ears perk up, because we're trying to listen for strange noises. Specifically, knocking, grinding, rattling, ticking, pretty much anything that does not sound like a purring engine. This is what you do not want to hear. Nasty stuff. Nasty. Can you see now why I insist on making sure that the radio's off? This is the moment where I pull out my trusty OBD2 scanner. You're gonna need to find the port for it. On most cars, it's gonna be bottom left underneath the steering wheel, but not always. Sometimes it can be in the middle, on the right-hand side, and some cars might even have it on the passenger side. What you're trying to look for is something that looks like this. Once I find it, I plug it in, and I wait for the scanner to light up. If it doesn't, it could mean that there's no power actually going to the port. Could be something as simple as just replacing a fuse, or as complex as a possible wiring or electrical issue like the computer. Yeah, in case you didn't know, cars do have computers as well. Kind of like Knight Rider. What I'm trying to look for here is if there's any trouble codes. See, sometimes a check engine will not be triggered immediately. It could be a pending code, a ghost code, or maybe a code that just causes the light to come on intermittently. A check engine isn't always a deal breaker for me, but it really all comes down to the type of problem that is there. So if a code does pop up, you can easily just hop onto a search engine and figure out what the problem is. If you're comfortable taking on that type of job, awesome. Use it as leverage. But if you're not, time for the next car. The next thing I check for are the monitors. If there are any that pop up that are incomplete, I scrap it. I do not care how great the car could drive or how great it looks. When any monitors are incomplete, there is a level of unknown risk that I am personally not comfortable taking. Because while it could just be that the battery was reset and there's actually no problems at all, it could also mean that someone intentionally reset it, and at any moment you could be driving and the check engine pops on and you're stuck with a big fucking problem. I don't want that for myself, and I certainly do not want it for you. Now, I always make sure to turn on the AC while I test out all the power features. As the AC is running, I make sure to start with the windows. The master switch allows me to test out all the windows. However, that doesn't mean that all of the individual switches are going to be working. So I make sure to get out and check each individual switch for all the passengers. And at the same time, I take the opportunity to buckle and unbuckle all of the seatbelts. Typically by this time, the AC should have cooled down. If it hasn't, I'd be a little bit wary. If it has, I just switch it over to heater. I don't care if I'm at 110-degree weather here in Fresno. I still make sure to check that heater, and so should you. Now's the time that I finally turn on that radio and I check out the different channels. AM, FM, satellite, Bluetooth. If there's Navi, I make sure to check it. If there's a backup cam, pop that shifter into reverse and make sure that it pops on. If there's heated seats, you best believe I'm gonna be toasting my buns. I'll also make sure to check out the power seats to make sure that they're functioning properly. All of the buttons and knobs that you find need to be tinkered with. A lot of people tend to forget this one, but checking the sunroof is crucial. That shit isn't always easy or cheap to fix. After all that's been cleared, then your partner needs to come back into the picture. Time to check the lights. Headlights, high beams, fog lights, brake lights, reverse lights, license lights, running lights, emergency lights. All of the lights. By this time, the vehicle most likely has warmed up enough. So I go back to the engine bay and I find myself the transmission dipstick. Same process, wipe off, put back in, pull it back out, and I just want to make sure that it looks nice and purple, or maybe a little bit pink. What I'm specifically looking for is to make sure that there's no metal shavings in it. And now the last thing before I go on the drive itself, I hop back inside and I put my foot over the brake pedal. And then I pop this bad boy, or gal, into reverse. If I feel it jerk me forward, like if a fucking mule kicked me in the back, and then put it into neutral, and then it's drive. Same thing. no kicks. I'm also keeping an ear out for any strange noises. I do this about 3 to 4 times, putting it reverse, neutral, drive, and then back up, and then do the exact same thing. If all that's good, it's time for the test drive. Like any safe driver, adjust your mirrors, put your seatbelt on, and make sure that you check your blind spots. The first thing I want you to do is check the brakes. If your foot just sinks or it feels a little bit spongy, there's a problem there. If it grinds, there's definitely a problem. If that checks out, then it's time to find out how the car handles when it goes over bumps. If it bounces like a boat out at sea, it's gonna need some suspension work. When the car shifts gears, is there a delay from one gear to the next? Maybe a slip or a kick. The kick is usually pretty obvious, but with the delay and the slip, sometimes it's a little bit hard to see, so it's very important that you keep an eye out on the RPMs. You want to test this out by accelerating slow at first, and then fast to see how the difference affects the gear change. Now at some point I'm going to let go of the steering wheel and see if the car either pulls left or right. This isn't like Fight Club where I'm just going to let go and see how the fuck we crash. Please keep in mind though that if you are not on a flat surface, it's almost impossible to be able to test out if it needs alignment. Your best bet is to hop onto the freeway, as usually freeways are pretty flat, which is a really good thing because you need to make sure that you test out the car in both the city and the freeway. Different problems can arise depending on the type of driving that you're doing. And you also want to make sure that you keep an ear out for any kind of grinding or ticking, any kind of strange noises that might come up. And you also want to make sure that you keep your nose out on alert. Any kind of strange smells like gas, burning oil, burning rubber, and especially maple syrup. Nothing against Canadians, I fucking love Canadians. But if you smell maple syrup, it typically means that coolant is burning, which could be an indicator that the car's overheating. I don't give a shit how stupid I look sniffing up in the air. It is totally worth it for me to be able to save myself not only money, but a massive headache in the long run. And hopefully, save you money and headaches as well. Once all of that has been cleared, it's time for you to head back. This is the part where things are gonna get real fun. This is gonna be negotiation time. But since I know that it's quite a bit of stuff that I covered in this and it's gonna be pretty hard for you to memorize it, I'm making my cheat sheet available to you in the description below. Don't worry, it's totally free. I take it with me every single time that I go and inspect a car, and it's just pretty much a way so that I can mark everything off so I don't forget. Now, if you end up finding problems that you're willing to take on, this is actually a really great thing, as you can use them to help you negotiate. And if you're not willing to take them on, you can ask the person that you're purchasing it from if they're willing to repair it, or ultimately just say fuck it and find yourself another car. But if you are willing to negotiate with them, this could be a real winner here. And if you're interested in finding out how I personally negotiate and get crazy good deals pretty much every single time without ever having to budge on price at all, you can check out this video right here. Thanks, and I will see you there. Okay, bye!